Picture long stretches of sandy beach, clear blue ocean, a backdrop of rolling foresty mountains.
Now at an enormous coal loading facility, some 1,000-ton ships, and rolling hills of coal.
And I remember just sitting at the top of that coal loading facility, and as far as I could see, there was just ships, right?
This is Fenton Lutunatabua, and he's a Pacific climate warrior. It's 2009, and Fenton has chained himself to the Hay Point coal loading facility in Queensland, and he's watching as these ships carry tons of coal dug from Australian mines out to the Pacific Ocean.
Just like, it looked like mountains out on the ocean, mountains of coal out on the ocean that were moving.
Fenton has put his body on the line, like literally on the climbing line, dangling 50 metres in the air to demand a stop to the expansion of the coal industry.
For years, Fenton has been one of the many voices of the Pacific nations trying to get a message through to Australia about climate change.
You need to do more if you keep calling yourself a big brother to the Pacific.
It's a message that Jess and I hear loud and clear, but we've got a little problem.
We know we have to call on the bigwigs, politicians, banks, big business, to get fossil fuels out of our system now. But for some reason, when it comes down to Ash and I, we're feeling a little out of our depth.
Get out of the water. I repeat, get out of the water. Professionals only.
Do you know how to talk to influential people about climate change?
Oh, not really. I usually just stay safe on the shore and leave it to the experts.
Are you guys wearing floaties?
I feel like an idiot.
Oh, something touched my leg.
Ash Berdebes and Jessica Hamilton, get out of the water.
Hello there, fellow systems changer. I'm Ash.
And I'm Jess. And we're two mates on a mission to work out how to talk about climate change to the people with power.
We've got research that says 90% of Australians want action on climate change. So why do we all hold back on asking for it?
I've never spoken to anyone in a position of power about climate at all.
You know, do you call someone? Do you email someone? Are you allowed to do that? I don't know.
I am curious to know what advice people have for communicating about climate better, and specifically communicating the importance of policy change.
I don't know how much ability I have to influence politicians. I do occasionally sign petitions when I see them, but to be honest, I never know what impact, if any, those petitions that I do sign end up having.
We need some help. So we're calling on the experts and our new mates at Greenpeace Australia Pacific to help us figure out how everyday people like Ash and I can influence the influential so that we can do it together, because we're heaps better together.
Okay, so back to that coal port that we were just dangling in. I mean, we weren't really at a coal port. We're podcasters. We haven't done any of the Intrepid stuff yet. We're on a Zoom call with Fenton, but he's now safe on the ground in Suva in Fiji.
I'm Fenton Lutunatabua. I'm a big believer in storytelling and purpose of something. Oh, and I probably should say I do work as well for a climate organization, 350.org.
And we're also joined by Joe Moeno-Kolio.
So I'm Joseph Moeno-Kolio. I'm from Samoa, based here in Samoa. It is just after 8 o'clock here, so it's pretty dark outside.
Joe's another Pacific climate warrior, and he's head of Pacific for Greenpeace.
We were a former colony. I think it was one of the first non-violent, peaceful civil disobedience actions of the 20th century that enabled us to beat an empire. And I often reflect on that as, you know, the methods used back then, I feel are quite potent and perhaps very vital lessons for this new empire of sorts that we're campaigning against now, which is greed and climate change and that sort of thing.
Both Joe and Fenton are incredible campaigners, total experts. They've had the ear of the BBC, CNN, even the Pope.
So all that work has been largely informed by where we've come from as a people, having to constantly live in this perpetual state of fighting back against some kind of injustice. It's come from the need to have really solid strategy in place, but it's also come from relationships like mine with Fenton and the Pacific Way, right? Working together for this kind of collective goal.
We're all talking about it whenever we like have our beers at the pub, but I don't know if we're doing anything. Like, how do we move from talking about it to being active?
So we asked, how can Ash and I add our voices to the campaign and ask the Australian government to walk the talk when they refer to the Pacific as family? And they were kind of like, yeah, that's on you guys.
The people that select your government are the ones who are responsible for delivering this message. You can build all the solidarity and goodwill with us, but it's the responsibility of the Australian voter.
You have to activate Australians and get them to use their vote in ways that will sort of shift us from the trajectory that we're on right now.
Okay, so we need to activate ourselves. I'm up for the challenge. I mean, I could learn.
I'd definitely like to learn a little bit more before I make a total fool out of myself.
Okay, let's get out of these floaties. Can we get some help here, please? Hello? Hello? Can we get some help here?
Excuse me.
Can we have the little safety orange ring thing? Thank you.
Okay, it can be a little scary to talk to people in power about climate change. So to get our heads around this little stage fright issue, Ash and I have started a book club. One of the easiest ways to get out of our floaties and get engaged. Reading, thinking, learning. So we've each picked a book and we're inviting the authors into our ears to talk about some of our favourite parts. Ash, do you want to kick us off?
Yes. So I wanted to know how to get into these conversations without getting entirely bummed out and bringing people all the way down. So I picked Glimpses of Utopia by Jess Scully. Jess has had a really interesting career between the arts, media and politics. She's currently the Deputy Lord Mayor of Sydney. And she happens to live around the corner from me, so I invited her around for tea.
Thank you for inviting me into your beautiful medieval stable. This door is the best. I love so much.
In case that didn't make a whole lot of sense to you, Ash lives in a tiny converted horse stable. It's very cute.
So I wanted to read this book because Jess has front row seats to this awesome future that's unfolding in pockets around the world.
I, every single day, get this burst of adrenaline when I hear from these people and meet these people, and I feel empowered and energized. And then I realized everyone else is super depressed because they don't get this. I need to bottle some of this lightning and put it in one place and share it. So I wanted to give people a document that said, this has been done before in hundreds of different places around the world. Let's pick and choose from this lolly bag of options.
So your book is basically a lolly bag of options for making the world a better place.
Absolutely.
I mean, that sounds delicious.
It does sound delicious. Can you give me one of these lollies, Ash?
Oh my gosh, can I show you my fave one? It's so tasty. So one of the things that kind of blew my mind in that it was so attainable and so impactful was the idea of this citizens' jury.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
So there's been like citizens' assemblies over the world. Sometimes they're just focused on climate. But the idea is that you get like a really random, broad group of people that represents the actual population. And then you get them all together, you give them all the information, and then you see what they actually want.
So instead of having a parliament of people who are mostly wealthy white men with law degrees, from teams blue and teams red making decisions, you have a group that looks like the actual population of the country, taking the time to take all the information in and then coming to a set of positions and recommendations.
And so in 2019, City of Sydney ran a citizens' jury. They asked people living in the council area to tell them what they wanted from the city.
So we received 2,500 ideas, submissions, pieces of input from citizens across the city, from experts, from kids on postcards, you name it.
And then a group of 50 randomly selected Sydney-siders sat down over a few months and they wrestled with all these ideas, and they had the opportunity to interview those experts who then wrote their own report. And
their recommendations were I get goosebumps thinking about it, because the first thing they told us was that we need to make a regenerative city, that we can't just be sustainable, but we have to go a step beyond that. We have to clean the air and the water. We have to give back more than we take. And they put care for each other, affordability, creativity and nightlife. All of these things were central to the vision, as well as a process of truth-telling and justice with First Nations people. So the recommendations you get from a representative group of citizens who have all the information is something quite different to what you'd get in the pub test if people are just kind of like spouting off based on the last thing they heard on the radio.
Ash, this is so good.
I know. And look what happens when we get together and we actually have a platform and the right information and the confidence to actually say what we want.
Once regular people have all the information at their disposal and they have the ability to ask questions and they're empowered to make decisions, you get courageous climate action and climate policy.
I just really love this story, Ash, because it's like we really do want this future and
heaps better future.
And it's we're not just like, you know, sometimes it just feels like you're just one small person just screaming into the void.
I know. And I was talking to Jess Scully about that feeling, like kind of how we feel small and powerless a lot of the time in this, and what's the point of even trying to talk to people in power? And she said,
that feeling that you have of being atomized and isolated and lacking direction or purpose and disconnected from the place that you live in this world and feeling always tired and put upon, that stuff is the system that we have today. That stuff isn't just happening to you. Everybody feels that, and that's the sign that this system doesn't work for anybody but a tiny few people at the top of the pyramid who are making plenty of bank out of it. And that's why they want everything, they want to keep this going exactly as it is. But every single one of us will do better, feel better, be more joyful and more joyous in our lives if we change this system.
Right, so we really need to change the system. But we already knew that.
We're just lacking the confidence?
Okay, let's think of this big old faulty system that we're living in as a big boat. The Titanic even.
Okay.
We've got the captain and the crew who are responsible for the safety of everyone on board, the Australian government. Then there's the people who built and powered the thing, the fossil fuel industry and other big business interests. And they're all eating together at the same first-class table to the tune of a string quartet, who'll play whatever music they get asked to.
Okay, so the string quartet is the media?
Yeah, certain pockets of the media. And it's like they're being conducted by some rich old bloke in America. Then there's us, 25 million-ish passengers. Now, this Titanic of ours is cruising, but there's been a few oversights. First, it's powered by coal, and it's going to lose steam if it doesn't make some changes real quick.
Ooh, not to mention that the workers are getting a lot of smoke in their lungs.
Second, there's a giant iceberg of extreme weather events in our direct path. We're all out on deck with binoculars, staring at this big iceberg and thinking, is that what I think it is?
That does not look good.
The people running the joint are busy steaming up the windows of the car in the hold with the fossil fuel lobby. And the media are playing their love song. And us? We generally trust that the staff know what they're doing, so we're strolling around, falling in love with Leo, and passively cruising toward... Well, we've all seen the film.
Like, this boat is not designed to withstand giant icebergs.
But there could be an alternative ending to our story, and that's because we know that we really need to go talk to the crew.
Okay, Jess, I'm on board in every sense of the word. I would like to navigate us to a new system, but how do we talk about climate change in a way that actually is going to make a difference?
Oh, Ash, what a segue. Let me tell you about my book club book. It is literally called
How to Talk About Climate Change in a Way That Makes a Difference.
And this is the person who wrote it.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Huntley. I'm a researcher and writer, broadcaster, and mother of 3 girls.
So Rebecca has spent years listening to what Australians think about a whole lot of stuff, but particularly how they feel about climate change. Rebecca was feeling kind of bummed out after our last election, feeling like all these people who say that they care about the planet didn't actually vote for the planet. So she wrote this book to help us out.
And it's really about not shifting people's belief in climate change, but shifting people's action.
In order to shift people into action, Rebecca says we need to shake up who is doing all the talking about climate change. Politicians would often say to her, yeah, sure, we hear all this research that says that most Australians want action on climate change, but we only ever hear from the Greenies.
One of the really critically important challenges for the climate movement is to diversify the people who talk about climate. People struggle to think about who are the most effective climate change communicators, and generally they think of them as scientists, politicians, the occasional celebrity. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio takes some break from having sex with supermodels to talk about climate change. Good on him. Actually, everybody should follow his Instagram account because it's very, very good. It's fun making fun of Leonardo DiCaprio. You've got to take your joys in climate change.
Look, I was a young Leo fan, but old Leo's doing some good stuff too.
Oh, Leo too.
Jess? Jess?
Sorry, Ash, yes? Sorry, I was suddenly a teenager again in Leoland. What were we talking about?
Rebecca was just saying that we only ever hear from scientists or politicians or celebrities.
Oh, yeah.
In the sense, you're more powerful if you're not an environmentalist. So one of the most kind of interesting and inspiring kind of developments are groups of people coming together, whether they be focused around a hobby or a profession. So you've got professional groups like particularly in mental health, nurses, midwives, accountants, architects, engineers, coming together saying there are genuine implications for how I do my job and my capacity to do my job and my professional ethics and my professional life from climate change.
So when politicians hear from all walks of life, then there's no option for them but to listen and act. So all the farmers concerned about crops and cricket coaches worried about kids training in the heat, people in the city, people in the country.
Okay, but what do we actually say?
Look, everyone's on board and so many Australians are concerned and alarmed and like, let's do something about it. But there's some points where you just go, and I'm just going to let the experts kind of do their thing because I don't know if I necessarily know how to speak about it so well or write about it so well.
Sure.
These people know what they're doing, so I'll leave it to them. That or I just don't know if there's any point.
Yes. So it is good that people who are alarmed about climate change feel like they want to understand the facts. But you don't actually have to know that much about science because the science is pretty basic. At a fundamental level, the world is heating up and the ice is melting. But I would say to people like you who are concerned about climate change, you only have to know enough of the science and you only have to know that 99% of all climate scientists believe this is happening. What is more profound is for you to think about what does this mean to me and people like me in my community.
What about all those auto-filled letters and petitions? Do they even make a difference? Does anyone read them?
Our friends at Greenpeace told us that adding names to a list says, yes, I back this message. And it's a big way that we can get involved and then stay updated in a campaign. And we can raise awareness around the issue. So I guess the thing with petitions and auto-filled letters and stuff like that, it's the first step. Yeah. And the first step is so important.
And easy.
Exactly.
And all those pre-filled letters, well, yeah, you can just click and send. Or you can copy it into a personal email.
And you can use the information they've got there to help craft your own message and customise it. So you can, sound a little bit expert yet personal at the same time.
We talk a lot about politicians here, but a lot of this stuff applies to when we're talking to anyone powerful. Banks, CEOs of dirty businesses, our bosses, whatever. Whatever way we're contacting them, as long as there are enough of us from all different backgrounds, we can just say,
these are the ways that we think that climate change are going to change the community we love. We would like a meeting with you to sit down to talk about this issue.
So you don't have to say, this is what I think you should do.
No, he said, we would like to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
They might palm you off to another staffer, but it's very hard to palm off 6 or 7 people who live in the area who are all nurses or all parents and just go and say, what are you doing? What are you doing about this question? What's your policy?
Is there any things that you definitely should not do once you go to, I don't know, write a letter, post something on social media? Is there some
Well, I can tell you,
language
if you ever write to a politician, never ever italicise, underline, or put something in caps.
Oh, really?
Having worked in many politicians' offices, the moment people do that, you just think crazy.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay. So writing that nice letter to your MP without any italics and underlines and bolds.
Do not do that.
And any,
do not say,
am frustrated and furious.
Dear Mr. Bastard MP.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I guess I would be more likely to listen to somebody if they weren't berating me for being useless and terrible at my job.
I asked Jess Scully about how to speak to politicians because, I mean, she is one. And her first piece of advice, she didn't miss a beat. She was like,
acknowledge what they've done. Look at the work that they've done, the policies they've had, the positions they've championed. Is there anything in there that you think is worthy of praise or support? And often the results that we see in policy are the result of compromise and negotiation and hard work. And maybe those people you're sitting opposite or writing a letter to have fought those battles and this was the best they could get at the time. So acknowledge the work that they've done and say, what you've done is so great. The next step could be, or building on what you've done, let's try this.
I love this advice because it kind of applies to whoever we're writing to, not just politicians, but me writing Combank to tell them I'm switching banks.
Yeah, to those CEOs of big dirty business. So just do a bit of research, see where they stand, acknowledge what they've done.
So we're not calling them a bastard or spraying them with all caps. But I'm still really angry about this.
Me too. And Rebecca said, yeah, we can keep that anger.
Anger is important. Collective moments of anger and frustration are important, but use anger like chili as a condiment rather than as a main ingredient. Is much
a good little kick.
Yeah, just a little kick, and use it strategically. Don't use it on everything.
I like that.
Are you angry? I hope you are frigging angry.
Okay, so you might remember from our first episode, I caught Jess wearing a leotard and sweating to Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda, but not the aerobics VCR, like to Fire Drill Fridays.
We may be stuck at home now, but we're not stopping.
So good. But anyway, we're not actually going to be speaking to Jane here. We're interested in this person.
We can't stop just because we're not together. This is our chance to reimagine the best our country can be.
This is Annie Leonard. She's one of the other brains behind Fire Drill Fridays. She's the executive director of Greenpeace USA, and she runs this project called The Story of Stuff. She makes these concepts that are so complex and big fun, and I love her.
Annie's an incredible communicator, a strategic powerhouse, and she's talking on a global level to the influential who have influence over the influential. So we're feeling pretty lucky to have an hour of Annie Leonard's time.
My kid just went off to college, so I'm like, that's it, man. 24 hours a day. Let's go. We're going to fight this climate crisis.
So we're not about to suggest that we all fight this 24 hours a day. That is one that we can leave to the professionals.
But now we've gotten to policy, we're wondering, can normal people like us even change policy?
So I'll say the question is, can normal people change policy? I will tell you that normal people are the only thing that have ever changed policy for the better. It is certainly not elected leader. There is no case in the history of the world that I know about where an elected leader woke up one day and said, I'm going to do the thing that is best for people on the planet. The reason that they do that is because normal people get together and exercise our democratic rights. In fact, abnormal people are the ones that want to continue funding fossil fuels and coal in this era where it is just such a dinosaur thing to do. So it's everyday people. And if you think about it, like we have the technology, we have the economic policies, we have the common sense, we have the science that says it is a imperative. It's not just a scientific imperative, it is a moral imperative. People are going to die if we do not turn this around. So we have every single thing we need to do this except one thing. And that is an engaged public movement demanding it.
So we're fired up and very willing to be part of this engaged public movement.
But we've come to Annie for help because we are busy, we have jobs and lives and family commitments and all sorts of things going on.
If we're going to pick the most influential person on this big systems ship who everyday people like you and me are actually likely to have influence over, who should it be? The captain? The crew? The band?
Well, first of all, I'll challenge you on your narrative. I think the influential people are your listeners.
What? You get that?
I think the influential people are your listeners. The influential people are the students and parents and teachers and artists and writers and engineers. Those are the influential people. We have the power here. The way that we make real change is by coming together. That is the key word here, by coming together, by building community, by building a movement. When we come together, our power amplifies, it gets more and more and more. And it's infinite. The more people we bring in and the more we start exercising our activist muscles, the more power we have to demand change.
Activist muscles. I love that.
Okay, let's get buff. Where do we sign up?
The other side has bombarded us with this narrative about there's nothing you can do, there is no alternative, this is just the way it is, your vote doesn't count. And we have to say, absolutely not. It's our country, it's our government, we're paying the bills, it's our future. Take it back.
We're paying for the things, like, this is our tax money. We should be taking it back.
It's
right?
It's like the very expensive tickets that we've paid for that faulty cruise.
You know, I often think about government as like people built government to take us to a better place, right? That's the idea. And if you built a car to take you somewhere and a bunch of fossil fuel company executives hijacked that car and started going in the opposite direction and running over kittens and birds and bunnies and smashing into stuff, would you just say, oh man, that car sucks? Or would you say, give me back my car? That's what we have to say about the government. These fossil fuel lackeys have taken over the government. It is our government. It is literally our money. It is our government. It is our future. Take it back. Why are we letting these people control the reins of power here? There's way more of us than of them.
Annie, are you trying to radicalize us?
Sounds like you already are there. You're getting there.
Ash, I am ready to get radical right now.
Great. I feel really hopeful. But I still want to hear from her. What is the number one thing? Like we've been asking everyone else. You know, what's that big, impactful thing that we can do? So we asked her.
There's literally thousands of things you can do. But the kinds of things that goes across no matter what kind of activist you want to be that make a difference. One is to find a friend who wants to do this with you so you're not alone. I can't tell you how many people write to me and say, and I want to get involved, but I'm only one person. And I write back and say, well, go get a friend. You just doubled. Go. But there are times when it's depressing and it's hard and you're tired or you just want to bounce an idea around. Get a buddy to do this with is really, really important.
Okay, step up. Now hold onto the railing. Keep your eyes closed.
Yeah, I'm not.
Step up onto the rail, onto the rail, and hold on. Now open your eyes. Will you be my heaps better friend forever?
Is that a pinky promise? I love it.
I saw you wandering around on the deck all by yourself looking all... I'm sailing into this crap future alone. And I thought, you need a heaps better friend.
I'm flying. Another reason not to do all this alone, and we don't really need to say it, but 2020 was huge. From the worst bushfires that we had on record to a pandemic that kept us indoors and totally changed the way that we're able to protest and gather publicly.
In spite of all this, what's so interesting is that we've still had a massive global uprising to tackle systemic racism in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And we've also had the most people voting in the US ever in history.
So we wanted to know from Annie's perspective, what does collective action look like in the post-2020 world?
This has been obviously an incredibly painful and challenging year, but for me, it's also a very hopeful year because I really do feel that we are sort of on this cusp of this great awakening. We don't have the luxury to solve one crisis at a time. And so we have to solve them together. And so this has brought together people working on immigration, on racial justice, on women's rights, on economic justice, on climate, all these issues together. And what we found when we all came together is that the solutions to one of these, if we do it right, is a solution to all of them. And we are so much stronger and smarter as a movement now because we're not siloed in our individual lanes, just seeing part of the problem. And right now, in the post-COVID moment, is the perfect moment for these politicians to change. They are going to be spending billions of dollars in post-COVID economic stimulus. They can use that money to invest in that safer, resilient, climate-sensitive, more equitable future. Like, they could put Australia on a path that would be beautiful and fair and just and healthy, or they can prop up these dying industries that are literally killing us. Like, this is the moment.
There's an alternative ending to our Titanic story, and we're pretty determined to have it.
I hate the original ending.
Let's rewrite it right now. We're all in the same boat, heading for trouble. The system's changing, but not fast enough. And we can all make it change faster because thankfully, all of us on board this ship have hands and we can grab one of the tiny 25 million oars.
Maybe your oar is your ability to call your local MP for a community Zoom meeting or make a podcast.
Yeah, all everyday people influencing everyday people to make massive change.
I read just today that 90% of people in Australia want stronger action on climate. Get going, 90%. That's a lot. Like, go.
Those are really good numbers. So, action number 1, go get yourself a buddy.
Send a text, grab a coffee, whatever floats your boat. Doing all this climate action stuff with a friend or a group of friends is so much more fun. Trust us. And you can kind of hold each other accountable in a really loving way.
And then, do you have a dream? Build a team. We've heard and we've had so many ideas while we've been making this podcast. And maybe you've now got an idea for kickstarting a community solar project or getting your local council to start a citizens' jury like the City of Sydney story Jess Scully told us about. And finally, literally the easiest thing of all to do,
just join an existing movement like Greenpeace or Seed or 350.org or Knitting Nanas Against Gas.
One of the things I kind of didn't realise before getting in this deep is that Greenpeace is completely independent. Greenpeace doesn't accept money from corporations or the government. It is entirely funded by people who give a damn. And if you give a damn, maybe you want to join their ranks. It's as easy as subscribing to their mailing list. You can go to greenpeace.org.au/Heaps Better.
On that website, you'll also find a step-by-step action plan to make everything that we've talked about in this podcast super easy for you to do at home with your mates. You can get there via the show notes too. And please share this podcast if you liked it, if you learned something, and mostly if you don't have time to tell all your friends what you learned, just send us their way.
Give us a nice review, please. It matters because algorithms and stuff.
We acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional custodians of the lands this podcast was made on and their enduring legacy of sustainability and caring for country. Heaps Better is a podcast made by us, Jess Hamilton and Ash Berdebes, with Greenpeace Australia Pacific and Audiocraft. The mixing engineer is Adam Connelly. Our brilliant EP and friend is Kate Montague.
Oh my God, thank you so much, Mama Kate, for just being the rock of our hearts.
And the creative lead at Greenpeace is Ella Colley. Oh, Ella. Our cute little podcast artwork is by Lotte Alexis. And this series also featured some original music by HC Clifford. A big thanks also to Liv and the entire Greenpeace team who got behind this project and worked their butts off. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to Greenpeace so they can make more content like this. There's a donate link on the Heaps Better webpage. Thank you to Rebecca Huntley and Jess Scully.
And to Moeno-Kolio and Fenton Lutunatabua, who gave us so much of their time and stories and words and wisdom. So much more than we could possibly fit into this little podcast.
And to all the writers and activists and analysts and artists and everyone chipping away every day to bring on the renewable revolution.
And thank you so much for coming with us. We know that together we are heaps better.